Everyone, we're going to move on to the second speaker now. I would like to welcome Vicky Mayer from Inclusi. So as well as being... Hello. We're getting started with the second part of the session now. Thank you. Okay, so as well as being the recipient of our 2024 Queensland Volunteering Award for Excellence in Volunteer Management, Vicky manages the volunteer services at Inclusi, which is a virtual social support service for older Australians. They've got 300 volunteers who only engage virtually. So Vicky has really had to foster that sense of community and create opportunities for collaboration and personal development and connection, all managed virtually. So I should also mention that Vicky is a virtual volunteer herself, being on the board of Story Dogs and also involved with Friends of the Koala. So this afternoon, Vicky's going to share her personal insights on using digital channels to effectively lead and engage volunteers. And I think she's also going to challenge us all to consider and reflect on how we might include virtual volunteering as part of our own programs in our future normal. So thank you and welcome, Vicky.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay, great. If you lose me or if it cuts out, just raise your hand. But thank you so much, Susie, and thank you, everyone, for coming here today. I'm really excited to speak about virtual volunteering, but also getting everyone to think about what our future normal could be. But before I begin, I love when I get to come into the Brisbane CBD because I just love the Brisbane River here. And every time I come in here, it just makes me reflect that the Brisbane River has been a place of connection and storytelling for thousands and thousands of years for our First Nations people. So today I would like to acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people whose journey intertwines with the Brisbane River, whose culture, history and traditions have shaped our landscape. I thank the Yagara and Turrbal people and recognise their connection to wildlife, the landscape, and the water where I live, work and play. I pay respect to ancestors and elders, past, present and emerging leaders. And Inclusi and myself are committed to honouring their stories and traditions and working together for a further connection around our mission of bringing everyone together. So welcome everyone. Happy International Volunteer Managers Day for yesterday. Can we give everyone a bit of a round of applause and celebrate while you're here together? What an amazing day to celebrate. As you may know, it was the 25th anniversary for International Volunteer Managers Day, and it's a great opportunity to reflect on the hard work that you're doing. And as I mentioned, I love this year's theme of what's our future normal. And I want to challenge you today around what your future normal will hopefully look like in the future. So a bit about Inclusi, as Susie mentioned. Inclusi has been operating for over 51 years. I keep saying 50, I get stuck on the big 50, but we're older than that now. And we offer social connection programs to help alleviate isolation and loneliness for First Nations people and our older Australians. And we do that through the power of technology. So we connect virtual volunteers with participants for one-on-one sessions. We have a virtual community centre where our participants can drop in and talk to a volunteer on duty. And we have our newest program, Online Clubs. So older Australians can drop in. We have trivia, travel, craft, we have theatre, into drawing, photography, everything, you name it, we have it. And that's led by our wonderful volunteer facilitators. So what are we going to be covering today? So I'm very passionate about virtual volunteering and I am a bit of a chatterbox. So if I'm not reined in by Susie, we'll be here all week. So we're just going to touch on a couple of things throughout today and hopefully there's some tips or ideas that you can take away and implement in your organisation, regardless if you're going to have virtual volunteers or not. So what I really want you to sort of consider is forget about what you've done in the past. I want you to replace that with what could you try moving forward? We know 2025 is just around the corner and 2026 is the year of the volunteer. It's a great time to implement change. It's a great time to look at AI, as Jade spoke to us earlier today. Ignore if you might fail. And I want you to replace that with what if you could succeed. So what's our future normal look like? We know in Australia there's over 56,000 registered charities. What do you think they're all fighting for? Volunteers, yes. There's a few things. Anything else besides volunteer? Money, yes. And depending on your cause, it also might be clients as well. So we know there is a decline in volunteering across Australia. We know there's more charities than ever before, and you're all competing for the same thing. How can you make your role stand out? We also know that volunteers want change. We know from the state reports from Volunteering Queensland, they want flexibility. They don't have the time that they used to have. We know there's increased pressures with the cost of living, family commitments and being carers. So we need to change. And if we don't change, what is volunteering going to look like if we're already having a decline? We know for you as a volunteer leader that there's challenges in your role. Retention is a big challenge. Time. Who feels that they're pulled in a million different directions? Only a few. Okay, wow. Tell me where you work. I'll come join. No, I'm not leaving inclusive. But we know that you can be pulled in a million different directions with limited resources as well. And that's where things like AI and automation can help you in there as well. So today I want to talk about how virtual volunteering might align with your organisation. What are the benefits? So if volunteers are wanting to have flexibility, short-term engagement, virtual volunteering can help with that. It offers flexibility. It can reach more people. So you could go national instead of local. You could go international if you want to, depending on any restrictions that you might have around funding and things like that. It can provide greater opportunities for inclusion. So what we have found at Inclusi, we've had volunteers come to us that during COVID, they were in lockdown in different states and they were isolated and lonely. They might have been stood down in their volunteer role locally or they couldn't get out to volunteer. And so they came and looked up for an online opportunity and found us. We also have several volunteers that have brain injuries. And so virtual volunteering has provided them an opportunity to have impact and purpose in a way that suits them, and they don't have to worry about barriers or fears or anything around potential discrimination that's out there in the world. We also have a volunteer who's visually impaired as well. And she came to us and said, I wanted to do something. I saw your role and I thought, this is it. I can give back. I can do something. I still have that purpose. So it can help with inclusion as well. It can help break down those barriers. If someone's in a regional area, they might not have the opportunity that aligns with their skills, but you could be offering a virtual volunteering that fits perfectly with what they're looking for. It reduces costs. So we know our volunteers are saying it's too costly to volunteer. They have to pay potentially to commute to your organisation. You might have fees for uniform, depending what that looks like, or even the cost of time. They might be on shift for 5 hours instead of potentially 1 hour at home when they can fit in all those house duties or study, work. If you've got a family, for me it's the pets coming and interrupting, looking after them and going for a walk. Whatever it is, it provides that opportunity for them. It's more sustainable. So it's sustainable not only for an organisation because it can help with costs, but it's also sustainable for the volunteer. They can potentially volunteer for a longer term basis because it is so flexible and because it is so convenient. But I do want to say virtual volunteering, as much as I love it, it's not the magic pill to your volunteer problems that you might be facing. It's not for everyone and it's not for every role. So you might be thinking today, we've got all these roles, that couldn't be a virtual volunteer role. Maybe not, but there might be some things in here that you can help build that community, or something that could spark an idea of, what about this role being a virtual volunteer role? So we'll touch on that a little bit. Well, But being a virtual volunteer, one of the challenges is building community. Do you think you're more likely to have a community if you're a virtual volunteer, personally? Or do you think you might feel more disconnected?
You're still contributing, so I imagine you feel like you're part of a community and less isolated than if you weren't volunteering at all.
Exactly. And look, this comes back to, and I know you're all probably doing this when you're onboarding a volunteer. What's their motivation to join your organisation? What's the motivation for that role? And we should be doing this as best practice anyway, because if you've got a role that is perhaps calling elderly of a morning and someone applies and they want to be a graphic designer, well, you're kind of setting them up to fail, aren't you? Because they're not going to do graphic design in that role. So understanding motivations generally is very big. But what we've come to find at Inclusi, it's even more important in the virtual space. We've noticed with our staff, we have a high portion of neurodiverse staff. And that has totally shifted the perspective of our organisation and the wonderful things we're able to do with our staff. So what that means when we're trying to build engagement, we were offering online events. We have an annual conference for our volunteers, and we do get great attendance at that. But outside of that, when we're offering events, we were getting little attendance. Why do you think that might be? Exactly, and that's a big one. If people are coming to be a virtual volunteer because they need that flexibility of time, and you're hosting an online event at 10 in the morning, and you know a high proportion of your volunteers work full time, well, they're not going to turn up naturally, you know, and that's okay. We have a YouTube channel, we record things, we provide lots of flexibility. The other option is if people were attracted to that role because perhaps they have social anxiety, perhaps they have some mental health challenges. They feel free to be able to volunteer in that capacity without having the obligation of doing that social interaction. So now when we see people that don't engage and come to our events, it's not actually a bad thing. We have to go back to what motivated them in the first place. As long as they're meeting, you know, of course, their obligations as a volunteer, you know, we understand that. We now have policies where if we have online events, you don't have to have your camera on. In onboarding, in the interview, we like you to have the camera on at the start, but we understand, particularly from a neurodiversity perspective, that can be confronting, and we give people the option to actually turn it off. We send the interview questions before the interview. Why not do that? You can do that in any role, even as a paid employee. Why not do that? Why not set that person up for the best possible interview they could ever have? It's like we're testing people when we throw questions at them. So we've changed a lot. We've changed our plain, you know, doing more plain language. Hemingway is something that we've been looking into as well, Andy. So there's lots of different ways and understanding that what their motivation is, how you build that community based on that. So, as I mentioned, considering the days and times, and also continually review engagement, which is what we have done. If something's not working, why? Our volunteers said to us they want the personal touch. So we email a lot. That's how we primarily communicate. But it was missing the personal touch from them because it's harder to build rapport in a virtual environment. We don't get to say, "Hi Susie, how was your shift today? It's great seeing you." We don't get to see them in that way. So we have to work a little bit extra hard to help build that community. And so our volunteers said, can we have the personal touch? And I remember one year for International Volunteers Day, Rachel, our CEO, is here today. I'm sure she has nightmares like me. We decided we would do this wonderful thing of posting a beautiful book to all our volunteers for International Volunteers Day. They were being sent from Melbourne. The courier didn't arrive on time. They got dispatched to Redbank. Here I am in my little car driving to Redbank so I could try and pick them up so we could get them to Rachel so we could get them out in time. It was a big production. But the feedback we got from our volunteers, because they felt it was personal. There was a personal message to them. It was a surprise. They weren't expecting it. Now, we can't do that every day. That's a very expensive endeavour. But we can do other things, which I'll talk about with Kudo Board as well. So some other things that we've tried to do, as I mentioned, events. We have the annual conference. We have a casual conversation series. So we invite guest speakers to come in where possible, and it's generally for an hour and a half. A couple of times a year at the moment, we've got about 3 left. And we know not everyone can come to that event, so we will record it and we'll put it on our YouTube channel for our volunteers to watch later if they wish. We have events in our virtual community centre that they can join in with their participants as well. So it's building that connection back with their participants. And of course, we celebrate National Volunteer Week, International Volunteer Day, National Student Volunteer Week as well. But how do you do that in a virtual environment? So for us, it's a lot of online stuff, special emails, special things that go out for them. But communication, as I mentioned, so all of you probably have a newsletter. In there, you know, there's some automations that you can probably do around your newsletter. You could use, as Jade was mentioning earlier, things like ChatGPT, or you might have in your software system some AI that you can use to rewrite that. And we've used a lot of automations. So this year, Rachel tasked us with the vision of innovation. And when we think of innovation, we do think of the big, shiny things. So in the aged care sector, there was a community group that built a robot to engage with residents in the nursing homes. Amazing. And we think that's innovation. But innovation is any change to process, anything new that you're doing. So you're all innovating each and every day. New policy, innovation. I know policy sounds boring. New forms for your volunteers, innovation. So we've also added in what we called KCC. So our volunteers are called Kindness Crew. And so we have a Kindness Crew drop-in. And this is where, you know, don't be afraid to try. What we wanted to do is provide our volunteers an opportunity to drop in on Zoom for about an hour twice a week. They could ask questions, they could meet with other volunteers. We thought it was going to be a great idea and everyone would love and use it. What do you think we encountered? Most of our volunteers are working. In the morning does not suit. We even tried weekend. That doesn't suit because you're with family. So the wonderful thing that we have at Inclusi is Rachel is really great at saying, go try it. If it doesn't work, particularly virtually, we're not investing thousands of dollars of resources. Give it a go. If it doesn't work, try again. We've opted in for book a call now, so volunteers can schedule a call with us at any time. Now that seems really simple, but we were paying a lot of phone tag. Does anyone have that issue with your volunteers? Constantly phone tag, constantly emailing. We're giving them the power. We're putting the power back in their hands to contact us on a day and time that works with them. And EdApp, which I'll talk to you about shortly, which is very exciting. We love our EdApp. And I have to disclose I'm not a paid representative of EdApp. I'm not getting any kickbacks from talking about EdApp. So you might be asking, okay, great, you've got virtual volunteers. How do you check in on them? It's a good question, particularly when they're not available all the days and times. So at Inclusi, we had a timekeeping app. So you might have Better Impact or some other rostering system. We were using Polixen, and they could clock in, clock out, the roster was in there. Our volunteers hated it. Does anyone else feel that in the room? And we got so much feedback from our volunteers saying, I don't want to use this. They couldn't cancel a shift. So if they had to miss a shift, we had to cancel it for them. I mean, how annoying for the staff. Like, that takes time and resources. What's the point of this? And once again, it was about having a go at something because we wanted to track the hours and making sure that obviously they were doing their volunteer work, but we listened to their feedback. So what we were doing is we would have Polixen and we would have a monthly support review form. So we use HubSpot, and it was a form in HubSpot. It gets emailed out every month, and it was asking them about their visits, you know, how's their well-being, how they're going, do they need anything from us? But the form would ask, have you logged all your visits in Polixen? So people were saying, I've already done Polixen, why am I now doing this? I feel this is duplication, it's just the little things. And so we listened. We got rid of Polixen. Now all we do, and there was, the best text was, what was it? Thank goodness this is the best decision you've ever made. It was from one volunteer. The amount of response, and in turn, what does that do? That builds engagement. because suddenly a volunteer feels, I've told you something, I know you explained why we need to do it, but you've actually listened to me. And I still have to do something, so I'm not getting out of it, but you've listened and you've come up with a better solution. So we revised the monthly support review form. We had 35 conditional questions in there. So not everyone had to do every question, but 35 conditional questions. We removed 35 of them. There's still a few in there. And so our volunteers came back. Our percentage rate of people completing that jumped through the roof. Because all of a sudden we made it easy. This is what we need to do. We need to make volunteering fun. We need to make it easy, and we need to make it accessible. And anything we can do around that will create a better volunteer experience and get you more volunteers. So our monthly support review is going quite well at the moment. Everyone loves it. And that's how we discharge, I guess, our obligations under the national standards as part of our supervision. And then engagement. So EdApp. We had Moodle. Has anyone heard of Moodle before? Yes, okay, I might not say too much, but we started with Moodle and we went to LearnDash. LearnDash is a learning platform, much better. This year, we launched EdApp. So EdApp is micro-learning platform, but we use it for so much more. We have communication banners. So the monthly support review form, there's a notification in EdApp and they can just click a button and complete through EdApp. The learning courses, we can access the library. There's thousands of courses, so dementia, health and safety, anything you can imagine is there. But one of the best things, if we're talking about AI, is we can create a micro-learning interactive course within 30 seconds. Actually less when we tested it, but I'll just say 30 seconds. Now, as Jade said earlier, you need to review this. You need to make sure that the content is simple. But what does that mean for your department that might be managing training? And you've got all these training courses to deliver. You could use AI, you could use from the library and then change it to be your organisation's, which is part of the licensing packaging that you get. And so we found in October, we did a campaign for EdApp and our users went through the roof. It engaged our volunteers. We have reduced red tape like there's no other. All the red tape is out at Inclusi. And so we actually don't enforce mandatory training. We think it's in relation to the role that a volunteer is doing. What role are they doing? It needs to be in proportion to that. But we do offer micro-learning for not only their role, but for their personal and professional development as well. We have an advocacy group. So we have a team of volunteers who meet every month and we have a topic per month and they give us feedback on that decision. So it could be we're doing recruitment and what did you love about when you were being onboarded? What did you hate? What were the questions like? They'll give us feedback. They're going to give us feedback in our census that we're going to be doing shortly. And they love it. They're so excited because they have involvement in decisions. We want to do what they want to do. There's no point us saying, oh, let's do this, and then no volunteer wants it. So we're very excited about that. We have a diversity, equity and inclusion plan also in development at the moment as well. And our volunteers are part of that and guiding us through that. We're also members, on a side note, for Diversity Council of Australia. I highly recommend you look into them and sign up as well. Not paid for that, but they're a great resource. So building community takes, different tools and resources. So Kudo Board is another way that we have implemented that personal touch. So as I mentioned, we email a lot, but with Kudo Board, you can use this for staff. We've gone a bit Kudo Board crazy at the moment at our organisation, but you can use it for staff, you can use it for the volunteer onboarding journey. We use it when we know a volunteer might be going through something. So they've had a graduation, their partner might have passed away, they're sick, anything that we're aware of, we start a Kudo Board. And we do two types. We do one that's from volunteer services, and then we'll do one that's for the organisation. So people like Rachel and other department managers and leaders can add those posts and thanks and celebration. And the feedback, there's a slide at the end, but the feedback that we've had from our volunteers around that has been amazing. Then on top of that, as I mentioned, EdApp, lots of different things in EdApp that you can do if you would like to do, and it's so simple and easy, and we love it and our volunteers love it. But HubSpot is our main CRM, so it's very similar to Salesforce. Now, depending on what you have, you might not have a big platform like this, but I encourage you to think about how you can enhance and change the volunteer journey. So with us, we have automations, so things flow from actions. We don't really have to do anything. We also have what's called tasks. Oh my goodness, HubSpot tasks. They are like rabbits. They just pop up everywhere. And what that means is when a volunteer is onboarding, we don't have to think, what do we need to do next? HubSpot will say, this applicant has applied, you need to book them in for an interview. This applicant has had the interview, this is what you need to do next. And so it's prompted throughout the whole process, but it's used for so much more. Book a call, similar to Calendly. We also use it for interview forms, so it goes straight onto the volunteer file. But if you don't have this, there are other things obviously you can amend to what your systems have. One of the things we do have is a feedback ticket. And this has been really great. We have it on our website, so participants can lodge feedback, volunteers can lodge feedback. If you went onto our website and said it was amazing or it was horrible, you could lodge feedback. But we also incorporate that in the monthly support review. So our volunteers every month have an option if they want to log feedback, whether it's a complaint, a concern, a suggestion for improvement, or some positive things they want to share. So once again, we're getting them in that consultation and feedback cycle as well. We do use other things like Microsoft Teams, like most of you have probably used before, Zoom, Culture Amp for staff and things like that as well. So consideration. So you might be like, oh, I don't think we could do a virtual volunteer role. Well, why not? So there's a couple of things with this. Think about what roles you have at the moment. What roles are on your wish list? And when you're thinking about your wish list, could that be a virtual volunteer role? So you might need someone to help with marketing. Why do they have to come into the office? Particularly if there's no sensitive information, why can't they do that at home? And then you might get someone who's actually a paid professional in that space and has a bit of time, and you're getting someone who's highly skilled in that area. As I said, it's not going to replace every kind of role that you have. If you're an organisation that has hybrid, so you might have in-person and virtual, or in-person and geographically dispersed, think about how do you keep them in the loop. And this is the biggest thing if you have a hybrid program. Everyone on site knows what's going on, but if they're not on site, they're out of sight, out of mind. That can come to communication. That can also come down to safety. Oh, we don't have to worry about that because they're at home. And yes, there are advantages, obviously, at home, but you know, don't forget those things, because that's what's going to impact the volunteer experience, and it's going to become a negative experience quite quickly. So think about that. What can you automate? Communication, the right balance. And this is what we're still working on, because we still primarily do a lot of emails. So what's that balance around what our volunteers want? When you're in the virtual world, there is a higher risk, potentially, of psychosocial safety issues. Why do you think that might be? Does anyone work from home? Yeah, okay, a few. Okay. So even if you don't work from home, have you ever gotten an email and you're just like, oh, what's this person? What are they on about? Jenny, do you know what they're on about? Well, maybe if you're working from home, you can't quite call out to Jenny. Immediately, we're at risk of misinterpreting that message and misinterpreting tone. And that can come across even more when you're dealing with virtual volunteers as well. And I know we're talking about plain language with Hemingway, but a staff member with us had looped us in on something called the Judge, and I'll share the link with Susie. You can put your message into that, it will read the message, it will interpret your tone, and it will come back and say, your message is very empathetic, you've tried to highlight the points, you know, this is if it's a good message, maybe, it depends what you're putting in. And then it will offer you suggestions. And that's a great tool even if you don't work from home, because if you're not sure, or if someone sent you a message and you're not sure, great tool to have that in your resource box in there as well. So think about things like that, because it can be so easy to misinterpret people when they're not face-to-face and you can't read their body language. So right now, I'm looking around making sure body language is no one's asleep. and no one is, so that's a good start. I know it's getting late in the day. So what have we been able to do? So the organisation has been around for 51 years. We have engaged volunteers for that time, but our volunteer services department has only been around for 3.5 years, maybe a little bit over that. And why I say that is Rachel, thank goodness, decided she wanted a volunteer services department and she wanted a volunteer services manager. I was fortunate to get the job. I'm still here. She hasn't fired me yet. Still here. And so it was just me, myself and I. And now I have a wonderful team of 4 volunteer support officers who are innovative, creative. The passion that they have for the volunteer experience is amazing. Sometimes I have to pull them back because they just want to do so much. And Rome wasn't built in a day. And if you are under-resourced or if you're stretched, you might have some really great ideas, but sometimes it does take time. So I don't want you to be hard on yourself if it does take that time and you need that space and you need to plan. But in saying that, we have had some great records at Inclusi. So we have, for the first time ever, hopefully you don't mind me saying this, first time ever in the organisation's history, have 0 connection requests. What does that mean? So every participant that joins our program that wants to connect to one volunteer, to meet with them every week on Microsoft Teams, have a chat, build that friendship, we have filled all requests. And our requests were very high at one time, which is a really great thing because it's great to help people. It's a sad thing that people need that, but it's a wonderful thing to celebrate that we have been able to put a volunteer with every single participant request. We have moved to waitlist mode twice, and that was the first for the organisation's history. What does that mean? We had to turn volunteers away. We said, we'll put you on a wait list. We did, but we couldn't take them off the wait list and had to say, go to Volunteering Queensland, have a look in your community, because we don't have anything right now. Why is that? I like to say that's because we've got a virtual volunteer role. I like to say it's a culture of inclusive. Maybe it's all of that. But these are some opportunities that you could have as well. We had record placements in our virtual community centre. So that meant we had every club that we offered a volunteer facilitator. We have content creators behind the scenes. And we have our Connect to You volunteers supporting participants for drop-in chat as well. And that was a record for the organisation again. And we established our volunteer advocacy group, giving them that opportunity to have real decision-making powers in the volunteer program. So we have a reward and recognition plan, like probably most of you do. We have an engagement plan, and we're underway, as I said, with our diversity, equity, inclusion plan. And we're doing a census on that. So why are we doing a census? We actually don't know a lot about our volunteers. Is anyone else in a similar boat? No, you might. Oh, yeah, okay, good. I'm glad there are a few. I was feeling really terrible there. We don't know a lot, and part of that is because we don't want to ask too many questions. We just want them to come in and we want them to feel safe and have that impact and have that purpose. But we want to know because we have department visions for the organisation where we are doing programs and services and we want them to actually have value. If we're not meeting the needs of our volunteers, it doesn't have value. National standards. Who, I'm hoping everyone has heard of the national standards. Good. So what we've done at Inclusi is we created our own evidence framework. So we went through the previous standards and went, this is how we're meeting it, this is what we're going to do, this is where we think we're exceeding it. And then the new standards came out, or the refreshed standards. We did it again. We were so far ahead that at the time, there wasn't a new gap assessment under the new standards available. We had to create our own because we were so fast doing it. And we review that, and our team does gaps assessments every year to make sure how we're going with that. So they're just a couple of things. And then a wellness pack, and of course we have EAP for our volunteers as well. We've done the wellness pack because they're not on site. There's some tools and resources to help them with their own well-being and safety as well in there. And our annual summit that we have in there as well. So, call to action. What I'd like you to go away from today is review, refine, revolutionise, reinvigorate, all the E's are dropped off a little bit, But think about your volunteering program. We're going into a new year. Who loves goal setting? A few of you are. Well, I love goal setting, and hopefully if you do too. We're going into a new year. This is a new opportunity. What's our new normal going to look like? That's up to you. You have the power. You're the ones who are creating a volunteer experience that they're going to take wherever they go. If someone has a negative experience, we know from data they don't volunteer again. It puts them off volunteering. Not the organisation, actually volunteering in general. So you're creating lifelong volunteers. What a special job. Wow, I think we underestimate that. Wow. You're giving people hope, opportunities. People who thought they couldn't volunteer, people who had discrimination and bias, they come to you and you go, welcome, look what we have for you. There's a place for you here. That is very powerful, very powerful. Use that power wisely, please. So, audit your volunteer roles. Go in and have a look. What roles do you have? What roles do you need? What could be virtual? What could be hybrid? How could you reinvigorate that role for the future to make it more flexible? You don't have to be a virtual volunteer position. How do you make it flexible? Instead of 5 hours, make it 1 hour. Shorten the time. Instead of 6 months, say, hey, come for a month, come for 2 months. I know it seems like a lot of work, but this is the future potentially, from my perspective, of where volunteering is going. So audit your roles. How do you measure engagement and belonging, and why is that important? A couple of things. If you were on the CPD network session yesterday, Sarah Wilson from Volunteering Australia is doing great research around mattering. So mattering, we know our volunteers want to know impact. They want to know their time has purpose, but it's amplified. If you know how you're measuring engagement, if people don't come up to your event like we've experienced, you're not going to be disappointed. Oh, these volunteers, why didn't they turn up? Put all this effort, we got the morning tea, why weren't they here? Because you know they're working and they're virtual or whatever it might be and that time doesn't suit. So you're not going to be disappointed and you're going to look at how you can do things differently. So that's important, how you measure engagement. We don't measure a lot of engagement inclusive by numbers. Numbers doesn't always tell you the whole story. The story of our volunteers who said, I had brain injury, now I can volunteer. That's powerful, that's the story. So what else I want you to consider? Why are volunteers leaving? If you have AI, as Jade mentioned, you might see this in your results. If they're leaving because they don't have time, then perhaps look at how you can make things more flexible, whether it's virtual or not. And look at inclusion. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Most of our roles are 1 hour a week. We still have people saying, I don't have time. Sometimes it's also that mental pressure of, I have to be online, I have to be here in an hour, and it just feels overwhelming. So we still have that. It's not going to solve all those problems. What could you do to make your volunteer roles stand out from the rest? You need a competitive advantage. What happened to Kodak and Nokia? They were big in the sector. They were the dominant organisations. Photography, everything, they had it. But they lost it because people came up around them and were constantly innovating, and they stopped. So keep innovating your roles. How can you make your ads stand out online? Maybe use some of that AI, whatever that might look like. As I mentioned, what can you do to make your roles more flexible? And could it be virtual? And what systems require changing? Cut the red tape, if possible. We couldn't cut all the red tape at Inclusive, but we did cut a lot of red tape to make it easier for you and for them. Oh, there you go, I was ahead of myself with the red tape. Audi, I put this in, good, different. We love being different. At Inclusive, it's great. Embrace the uniqueness. Embrace what your volunteers have to offer. I was at a workshop recently with Daniel Murray, and he was talking about change. So all this might be to you going, I'd love to do this. This seems like a lot of change. You know, we just had change 2 months ago, or yesterday, or whatever the case might be. We just had change. And he had a great example. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you be happy or sad? But no one cares by the sound. Happy or sad? I mean, you might be overjoyed, you might be thrilled, you might be in shock. It's a change. If you won the lottery, or for me it's Prizer Homes, it's a change in your life, but it's a good change. So not all change, well, potentially, not all change is bad. So keep that in mind as well. So I just wanted to share that's some of the feedback from our Kudo boards that we received. I have edited some of it out because there was a lot of personal information from one in particular, but they just love it, and it's super easy. This is from our monthly support review form, and it had thank you for acting on suggestions about monthly reporting form and making adjustments. Really nice to be heard. Such a simple thing, but we love hearing that too. You don't want to make change and then no one appreciates what you're doing. And look, this is a bit hard to see because I've zoomed it out, but this is what a Kudo board can look like. So you can see there's different posts and messages from everyone. And this one the team sent to me at Inclusive at International Volunteer Managers Day, and it was so beautiful. But this is what you can do with your volunteers. Balloons can come up, but you know, it's wonderful. A nice little thing for them in there as well. And just some photos from our advocacy group, some of them there, and some feedback from them as well. So as we go out today, what I'd like you to do, as I said, think about how you can do things differently. Think about what the future normal for you might be and for your volunteer program. And I really encourage and urge you to think about what you can do to safeguard your volunteer program. What can you do to create that change? And I want you to remember the importance of your role. You are the leaders guiding this change. You are the experts in the field, but you're the ones providing the opportunity. So please, I want you to safeguard that with yourself as well. Any questions? How are we going for time? That seemed like a long... I told you I could keep talking. 5 minutes. What are questions, or do you... What I might like to do, if you're okay, if you'd like to just maybe chat with the person next to you or your row, and I want you to sort of say what change that you're thinking that you're going to make to safeguard your volunteer role. So I'd love you to just spend a couple of minutes, or maybe some ideas. It might have been from Jade, it might have been some ideas early in the week from International Volunteers Day. What are you going to do to safeguard your volunteer program? So we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. I know everyone loves chatting. Okay, thank you, everyone. Great to hear some lovely chatter going. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. We'll be wrapping up momentarily before the AGM. Hello. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll be wrapping up very shortly for the AGM. Loved all the chatter that was happening there. Would anyone like to share maybe something that they came up with that they want to look out for next year or even this year on how to safeguard your program? Any brave people? Love it. Look, yeah, we're Kudo board crazy at the moment. We're probably overdoing it. Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Lovely. Yes, and that's the aim. Like, you know, sometimes it might be refreshing what you already know. Hopefully, and look, that's really good because sometimes we get lost in the day-to-day of everything, and you know we need those aha moments. Hopefully there's some new things as well. Anything else anyone would like to share? Yes, sir.
I think just looking at some of the tools and systems out there, really to make it easier for our people that are managing volunteers. Like we've got lots of people that support volunteering in different spaces, so yeah, almost supporting their capability and their capacity to do that alongside all the other things that they do in their roles as well, to make it easier for them. 100% correct. You know, there's a lot of work involved. You know, we talk about that volunteers donate their time for free. But it's not free to lead and support volunteers. It takes time and resources, and anything you can do to streamline that, whether it's a system, AI, automations, you know, it does make things easier for you then to go and do other things as part of your volunteer program. Yes?
I don't have opportunities virtually, but so much of what has been said today in your presentation is completely transferable to our in-person roles as well. So there's some great ideas to be able to take home and adapt that as well. So that's been really great.
No, I appreciate that. And look, even if it's just reviewing your communications for plain language, you know, checking tone before you do new templates, creating the templates so you're not forever having to recycle and type over again. So, no, that's great. Thank you. Oh, yes, up the back.
Can you please repeat the name of the actual app that does the interpret the tone? Because I missed that.
Yeah, I believe it's called The Judge, but we'll share the link with you so you can have a look. Same with Hemingway. We'll do the same.
Okay, can I have a round of applause for Vicky, please? That was wonderful. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling quite inspired to go back and look at what we're doing and how we can do it differently. So thank you so much, Vicky. And Jade had to leave, but I'll pass on her thanks from all of you. And thanks to BDO as well for hosting us today. There's a feedback form at this QR code, or you've got a hard copy on your chair. We'd love you to fill it out so we're starting to plan our 2025 professional development calendar. So please put down what you'd like to hear from us for next year and make sure you drop it into the basket that's by the lifts. We also would love you to stay for the AGM too. And I just wanted to leave you with this, but as you know, our rescheduled dates for our volunteering conference in 2025 is being confirmed for the 20th and 21st of March next year. We're really excited about how the program's shaping up. The registration platform will be open very soon, I promise. But in the meantime, we have an exciting speaking opportunity for volunteer leaders, and we're inviting you to express your interest. So during the conference, we're going to feature case studies from volunteer-involving organisations who have seen success in a particular aspect of volunteer involvement, so linking to the national standards. And each case study will be shared by a representative from your organisation through a 10-minute presentation, and we want it to include practical takeaways like this presentation has today that people can try out in their own organisations. So it's a really fantastic opportunity for you to showcase the work that your organisation is doing. Plus, Any of our selected case study participants will receive a complimentary ticket for the presenter. So it's well worth doing. I'll send around a link after the session as well, or you can have a look at the expression of interest form at that QR code. So I think that wraps up our workshop session. We have got about 20 minutes or so until the AGM kicks off. Please stay, chat, and we'll look forward to the next part and look forward to seeing you at some of our sessions next year. Thank you.